The church felt crowded, yet the silence was louder than the hymns. People avoided the coffin the way villagers avoid a cursed well. My grandmother's reputation lingered like smoke. She ruled with insults sharper than knives. When the priest asked who would speak, chairs creaked, but no one moved. My relatives stared at stained glass windows as though answers might appear there. I rose slowly, feeling every eye tracking my steps. A whisper rippled through the room, a mix of relief and dread. They assumed I would polish her legacy with polite lies. They didn't understand. I stood there not to honor her memory, but to reveal what her presence had cost us. My moment had finally arrived. My grandmother understood influence the way others understood breathing. Every conversation became a transaction, every gesture a calculated strike. She remembered private details the way collectors treasure rare coins. Birthdays weren't celebrations. They were opportunities to evaluate weaknesses. I witnessed her turning siblings against one another with carefully placed comments, then watching from her chair as arguments erupted. She enjoyed chaos more than affection. At family dinners, she dissected marriages with observations that felt like predictions. When my mother cried, grandmother treated it like entertainment, offering tissues only to observe how broken someone could look. At her funeral, no one mourned. People exhaled, relieved her reign had ended, relieved that conversations could finally exist without hidden traps. Her home wasn't a residence, it was a vault of mysteries. Visitors arrived after dusk, leaving quietly with faces drained of color. Cabinets had locks with no keys, drawers required codes no one knew, and a single phone rested on a table as though answering it could summon misfortune. After her death, curiosity overcame caution. We opened the forbidden drawers and found letters addressed to strangers whose names stirred no recognition. Each envelope contained leverage, unpaid debts, receipts proving affairs, written confessions people thought buried forever. Every document was ammunition organized and preserved like trophies. The house revealed her true occupation, collecting the vulnerabilities of others. Even in death, her influence lurked between paper and ink, waiting to be noticed. Her cruelty found me when I was 12. Until then, I believed her sharpness targeted adults, not children. One afternoon, she called me into her room and inspected me as if I were a disappointing bargain. She said my dreams were pointless, that some people were born bent, incapable of standing tall. My report card became her script, each grade a punchline. She ridiculed my clothes, saying ambition couldn't hide poverty, and mocked my voice, claiming it sounded unsure. Something hardened inside me that day, not misery, but comprehension. She didn't wound people accidentally. She enjoyed shaping insecurities like a sculptor shaping clay. I learned then that grandmother measured worth by how deeply she could scar the hearts around her. Her reputation stretched beyond our walls like smoke drifting through streets. People lowered their voices when she walked by, terrified of being overheard. She appeared at weddings, funerals, and court hearings uninvited, offering observations that hinted at secrets no one admitted aloud. Rumors circulated that she knew details about pregnancies before families announced them and predicted breakups weeks before arguments began. She had an uncanny ability to recite dates people wished forgotten. Respect didn't surround her. Fear did. Children paused their play when she appeared, and adults straightened their posture like guilty students. She didn't need power granted by others. She extracted it, turning information into currency. In her presence, silence wasn't politeness. It was a shield. A month before her death, the first crack appeared. A neighbor arrived, trembling with rage, shouting accusations loud enough to rattle the windows. Doors slammed, voices clashed, and for once, grandmother didn't silence the storm. By evening, whispers spread like smoke. Someone possessed evidence capable of destroying her influence. Overnight, her world shifted. Curtains remained closed, lights stayed dim, and phone calls went unanswered. She paced through rooms she once owned with unshakable authority, now frightened of shadows she once commanded. Locks multiplied on doors, and her footsteps sounded restless, almost hunted. The woman who had controlled everyone else finally tasted vulnerability. For the first time, grandmother feared something outside herself, and it unsettled her entire kingdom. When I reached the podium, I didn't mention her achievements or recite fabricated virtues. I spoke of the wounds she called wisdom, the trust she shattered for entertainment, and the laughter she confiscated from children who learned to fear birthdays. I described how she treated affection like a weakness and loyalty like a leash. People shifted in their seats, eyes fixed on me, waiting for exaggeration. None came. Heads lowered, hands tightened around tissues, and the priest blinked rapidly as though unsure whether to intervene. The silence that followed wasn't shock, it was recognition. I wasn't rewriting history. I was releasing it. I ended by saying her shadow would fade, not because she died, but because truth finally breathed. The moment my final sentence settled in the air, a noise thundered from inside the coffin, a single, slow thud, heavy enough to silence every breath. Someone screamed, chair scraped, and the organist froze mid-note. The funeral director attempted calm, insisting it was pressure, but his trembling hands betrayed him. Panic rippled through the aisle as people backed away, crossing themselves, refusing to look at the polished wood. Some fled toward the exit, convinced her spirit refused to surrender control. The room transformed from solemn to terrified in seconds. Even lifeless, she dictated emotion. Her legacy wasn't love or remembrance, it was fear. In death, as in life, she ensured one thing remained unchanged. No one walked away unaffected.